So I actually used one of my AI workflows that was gathering information from all the notes the CSM had kept, all the scoping we had done before, like looked at their annual reports, their competitor information. I heard after that they were very impressed that someone who had never even spoken with them before could come into that meeting and be so prescriptive with recommendations.
Our guest today is Lisa Knowles, a strategic program manager at Miro, a company that I think probably everyone who listens to this podcast has used one way or another, or at least have heard of. Lisa, welcome to How to Love a Customer.
Great. Thanks so much for having me today.
Lisa, strategic program manager sounds both kind of amazing and a little bit mysterious. So,
Yes.
we were just talking before we started recording that it can mean lots of different things. So what does it mean? What does your role in Miro include, and what does a day in the life look like?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess when I joined Miro, I was a customer user insights manager. So I was really focusing on ensuring that we were putting into place processes that helped us leverage customer insights at all levels of the organization, and really even at a strategic level, or for product teams or for customer success managers, being able to leverage these insights. I guess with the evolution of AI and us also going through an AI transformation ourselves within the organization, I moved into a role that was a little bit more targeted towards ensuring that we can implement different systems that are changing so often to help our team succeed, and also infuse insights into every stage of the process. So that's why it's strategic program manager, because I'm kind of working on what are the most impactful solutions that could change and they could evolve, but still ensuring that I'm working at a strategic level to ensure everyone derives value from all the different tools and services that we're using to get insights, basically.
Yeah, and we'll definitely dive a little bit deeper into AI and
Yes.
how Miro approaches it, because I think you guys have gone, as many SaaS companies have, all in on this, and I've introduced a lot of features that I personally use quite often. Before we jump to that, for a couple of our listeners who maybe don't know what Miro is, how would you define it today? I know back in the day it was just a collaboration sort of space, a infinite whiteboard sort of thing, right? But it seems like these days Miro is a lot more than that.
Yes, it is for sure. And now we are the innovation platform. So it's still really based on visual collaboration and teams working together. But we really want to take them through the entire life cycle of innovation. So starting from brainstorming and ideation to reviews, all the way to structured outputs and delivering valuable products and services to customers. So that's really what we focus on now. And it does start as an infinite whiteboard still, of course. But then there's just so many different ways that you can work with the platform and adapt it to your specific needs and use cases, especially because everyone needs to innovate, but everyone innovates differently. So it still has that kind of whiteboard starting place feel, but we just have many different functionalities that you can take it in your own direction and also adapt it to your specific processes and strategy within an organization.
Yeah, and of course, we at Chatham are avid users of Miro, and it's such an interesting space because the whole promise of the product is that you can do anything in it. So I guess the flip side of that is you never know exactly what the customer will exactly want, right? So there are so many different workflows, and you can see it sometimes. I like going on the template store that you guys have and seeing like what people have done, and can become like crazy.
Absolutely.
So obviously, like these days, there is a lot of pressure to adopt AI everywhere, right? It's not just pressure, it's almost kind of an opportunity as well, right? So I guess for you guys, how do you, what's the philosophy? How do you see it? As a threat, as an opportunity, as a little bit of both? What's the approach, and how, I know you have released a lot of AI-based functionality, so how did the company approach that?
Actually, since I joined Miro, I was working with AI tools just because we saw that in order to derive insights at scale, we really needed to leverage natural language processing and machine learning models, because we were getting a lot of quantitative signals, but then some of the most valuable signals that you get from customers are not quantitative, they're qualitative. And we needed to process that at scale and turn it into strategic decisions. So we've been working with it for quite some time. And our approach has always been like innovation and experimentation, kind of centered around everything that we do. So that really did mean adapting quickly, but adopting tools really quickly. It's okay if you put in time and it doesn't work in the end, as long as we do it safely, securely, and we ensure that we're learning from everything along the way. More recently, we've definitely have, I sit within a team that is biz tech, and it's also just our business transformation team. And we are all focused. We all have like innovation and AI on our brains all the time. And that's kind of like the center of this AI strategy. But we also empower everyone within the organization to experiment and to leverage different AI tools. So we have different AI tools that are approved that you can use for your own productivity or that you can use for your own processes. But then we also, and this is what I focus on, I deep dive into specific teams' needs and use cases and build more operational tools around or with AI, powered by AI. And I actually primarily work with Miro, so that's my main tool. So I'm building all of these different workflows for our go-to-market teams that help them really get to know their customers better and customize offerings for them. And this has been really powerful because it's the old adage of eating your own dog food, drinking your own champagne. But being able to do this in Miro and then have the customers kind of see us doing this in Miro opens up, like, it's just like a light bulb for them, and it opens up so many doors for them. I also do like the approach that Miro is taking because a lot of times AI is behind the scenes and there's a lot of AI slop out there. There's a lot of, just hallucinations and you don't know what's coming out of this. But with Miro, we call it AI, or the canvas is the prompt. So you can see everything. You can see what's going on, where the information is coming from. We're connecting to a lot of different systems. So we're bringing in the single source of truth into Miro and then being able to link to it. You can even open up and see the prompts. You can see how we got these outputs. And as someone who has a background in data and analytics, for me, that's really critical that we always have evidence at every stage of the process and that we can keep the human in the loop and ensure that there's just different stages that you're working at where you're checking your data, you're checking the information along the way and not just relying on AI to spin out what you need for deliverables. So
sort of transparency as much as you can get with these models, right?
Absolutely.
And reproducibility. So
templatizing.
Every output from AI could have been done by a human as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's very similar to how we approach the chatter mode. In our work with agents, is that one see that it's pretty clear how the outputs were achieved, and that in theory a human, obviously it would take a lot more work for a human, but at least in theory a human would be able to reproduce everything.
Absolutely.
So the agent is not doing anything magic, which is where I think a lot of these systems do fail. So can I ask, Lisa, if it's something you can share, what has been so far like the most popular AI feature for your users?
The one that has been like quite, I think, one of those wow moments, like when we first saw what our AI team was creating internally, and then when we also have showcased this to our customers, is what we call AI flows. So it's a visual way to build an AI-driven workflow. And it can then, it's on the canvas, so you can use different inputs and outputs to generate content, to summarize information, etc. You go from all of these inputs, like tons of sticky notes and anecdotes from customers and maybe your product brief, and you pull that all together. You just connect everything and you visually see it. Once you prompt, you visually see it creating the output. So being able to work with multiple inputs and seeing the output, and then you can do it in stages. So you can say, here's where we do one step, which is going to be just summarizing all of this, these customer inputs. Then let's move on to the next stage, which is let's think through some ideas and let AI also help us with some of those ideas. And then the next stage is summarizing that. So I think this flow capability, instead of going from the chat-based model to this visual way of seeing AI work for you, is quite eye-opening. And then also just so great to see that okay, I'm going to create an image plus a table to tell us what are the next steps, plus a document overview, plus an email brief that I need to send out all in one step. So it's quite nice.
And shifting gears a little bit, Lisa, like, what do you say are the main challenges right now? You listen to the customers a lot, right? You spend a lot of time even before the AI wave doing this, and even more sounds like after. So Miro is a software company that was born before AI, became huge before before AI. So what do you see as like challenges for software vendors, essentially software players at scale in kind of growing through this transition?
Yeah, I think it's definitely how to help customers understand the value. And I see every day, I also see with customers or internally, those aha moments where people just didn't know that we could do these types of things or what the possibilities are. So a lot of times we're also showing the art of the possible of here's a similar use case, how it can get done. And it is kind of revolutionizing how you worked before, and it might change your ways of working. And we don't necessarily want to just copy and paste a process. We might need to evolve a process a little bit, but it's all going to be very valuable and very helpful. Part of that is just, showing the art of the possible, but then also I think we're still at the stage where we have to work with customers to deeply understand their needs and their use cases and go beyond use cases, like what's the real pain points underneath, what's taking so long, and then kind of guiding them through, this is what we can do and these are the outputs. So I think there's still kind of a gap between being able to know what's there and then know how to actually put it into place and then scale it.
Yeah.
But that's where there's a lot of experimentation. That's where you really do have to partner closely with a customer to help them understand the value that you can get out of these systems. Yeah.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And just before we jump into the story part of the conversation, so what has been so far, at least the output of that, the results? Have you seen kind of increased NPS in our world, right? Or other metrics, engagement, satisfaction, anything like that from people who started using AI features?
Yeah. So as part of our annual event, which we call Canvas, we just launched a lot of this in October. But I've actually even been on site with customers when we were doing some of the private betas before we made that announcement. And then kind of seeing all the ideas spin up of what they were thinking through of how they can actually leverage all of these tools and functionalities and how it's going to change the way they work has been really incredible. And then since then, we've gotten so many requests we're still in beta, but so many requests for the AI flows in beta. And then also just in general, our growth within the platform and bringing new teams onto the platform because it's a new level of collaboration. So a lot of the things that we work with are around bringing teams together and collaborating, whether sync or async, doing that all within Miro. So being able to see more collaborative sessions because, we were able to spin up things faster, but we still need inputs here and there. And bringing people onto the platform has been really successful. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can definitely testify in my own experience. If previously I would sometimes think like, do I want to build this complex diagram in Miro? Now, more often than not, I think, I can just describe it in a fairly short prompt and it's built. So of course you do end up building a lot more diagrams, which is usually good. Awesome. Fantastic. Lisa, so I guess our show is generally about customer stories, right? So what story do you bring us today?
Yeah, so would love to talk through one because this was actually kind of early on in our AI transformation journey. But and when I first started doing these more strategic programs to test out how we can use different functionalities. But one of our customers and I was building workflows for our go-to-market teams. And one of our customers in Japan was super interested in what I was working on internally to help our teams and leveraging Miro for it. And they were at the beginning of their AI transformation, but they were a bit overwhelmed with what to do next, how do we get started and whatnot. So in order to prepare for that, I had never met with the customer. There was all this information. They had been a customer for years. I really needed to understand who's this customer and what am I getting into and how can I help talk through the AI journey with them. So I actually used one of my AI workflows that was gathering information from all the notes the CSM had kept, all the scoping we had done before. It brought in, looked at their annual reports, their competitor information, looking at all these data points to bring together kind of an overview, like a briefing overview for me going into that meeting. And then also the next step of that was, okay, then how can AI help them transform their business? And they were a Japanese customer. I was the only non-Japanese person in the room. So I output the slides all in Japanese as well. So created 2 versions of the slides. I did that in maybe an hour and then was able to meet with them and say, this is Miro's AI transformation journey. And based on all of these use cases, and I know what your goals are as a company, I know some of the pain points and some of the competitive pressure you're facing, this is what I would recommend. And I heard after that they were very impressed that someone who had never even spoken with them before could come into that meeting and be so, I guess, prescriptive with recommendations. And it was thanks to some of the things we were building ourselves in Miro to help our own customers do that. So we've now doubled down on that effort and we saw, okay, this is really valuable. Sometimes we have executives going into meetings and they want to really understand the customer at a deep level. But of course, there's so much information to get caught up on and to get briefed on. But then generating those types of insights and reports going into any type of engagement with a customer, we've seen be super valuable and help us really connect with the customer and ensure that we have shared goals, ensure that we are really on their side and we want to help them succeed. And that comes from even sometimes bringing forward new information that they weren't aware of, like how their users are using the tools and what their users are asking for. And I think that all of that information just being kind of brought together really quickly has then helped us really succeed with our customers now.
Were there any unexpected findings from that research? Because, yeah, of course, everyone does want to do research. Often you hear the argument against, no one can really argue against doing research, but time is precious, right?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of other different things. And people sometimes say, like, yeah, it's all great that I know all of the stuff from the annual reports and whatnot, but I'm still going to deliver the same pitch that I kind of want, right? So if you can dive a little bit into details, like how do you adjust? And were there, for that specific customer, we don't have to name them, but were there any sort of unexpected things that you changed around the pitch by understanding them better?
Yeah. So actually in general, because we are this blank canvas, we do have to really tailor our communication and messaging to customers because it won't resonate with them if they came to Miro or they're using Miro because, they're doing more marketing and they want to do more planning for marketing campaigns, et cetera. That could be completely different than another customer who's designing shoes and working through that process. So every customer has a completely different need and story. So we can't really afford to not do that research, I think, and not understand their goals and their pain points. They're unique. And even if they're designing shoes the same way another customers, there's still different needs and there's still different departments and ways of working. So we really have to do that research. And what we're doing now is just accelerating it. So I hear from our test users that we're working with, which is CSMs internally, that they're saving 4 to 6 hours per engagement because they really care. They were always doing that research, even if it was after work and in their own time, because they wanted to go in and ensure that they were building the right solution in partnership with this customer. So definitely, I think there may still be some resistance to, if I don't do the research myself, how can I know it's true and accurate? And that is also why we don't just throw out tools. We're doing lots of rounds of testing because the content has to be right. Otherwise, we're having people adopt these tools. And then if they realize that one little thing is off or one thing is wrong, then they can't trust it again. So, yeah.
In terms of kind of process, what structures at Miro, process at Miro in your team allowed you to execute this?
It comes from the top down, just like with, we can't just say we're customer centric and then all of a sudden we're customer centric. You have to have it from a leadership level, say we're customer centric, and now we're also implementing processes and ways of working around being customer centric, and we're giving you the systems to be customer centric. That's really critical. And I think the same thing with AI is that approach of we want to be leaders in AI. So that means that we have the systems to support that. We have the thinking and the kind of culture of experimentation to support that. Even for us, our values are really strongly tied to these types of things. And then we have sub behaviors for each value within our organization that help us kind of go that route. So whether it's customer centricity, one of our values is practice empathy to gain insight. And then we also have this behavior and value around always learning. And then, of course, one around collaboration. But having those in place really puts us in a good position to experiment, to work with AI. And then, of course, we have to do it in a safe and compliant way. But our security and compliance team is very open to partnering with us on this and saying, we want you to succeed too, and we all want to, and let's just have ideas together about how we can do this the right way. So yeah, I definitely think it has to come from top down, but then also putting all of the support in place to let people actually live out that value. So
how do you kind of like help those different teams, I guess, understand the value of insights about the customers? I don't know if maybe we use this story, or if you want some other one, but something to make it like a bit more concrete about the benefit you get from understanding your customers at a deep level using the tools you guys developed.
I think definitely just seeing success coming, especially when we were doing tests in that particular example where we're helping teams prepare for an engagement with a customer. Again, they might have gone out and done that research themselves, and they've also, our go-to-market teams are fantastic. They're going through also tons of training. We're changing our product all the time, and they're always on top of like, what's the newest features and functionalities, and how can they be used, and how can they be used for this customer? But beyond that, for some of the teams and where we have seen success is teams are finding, oh, I didn't even think about how to craft the messaging in the right way. And now I've done that well, and it really resonated with the customer because we came in like with a little bit more information that helped them really, or helped it click with the customer about the value that we can deliver for them. And that's what we're kind of pushing towards is, and one of the main metrics that I'm actually working with is giving our teams more customer facing time, because then you have time to ask better questions, to really consult with them on best uses of the platform, etc. You should be spending as much time with the customer as possible. So let us do the work kind of behind the scenes and empower you to spend more time with the customer, which will then give us better information and inputs that will help us also then deliver better solutions long term.
Is there maybe a kind of, I know like, as insights professionals, we're all about the data and the power of data, but I don't know if it has been your experience, but it definitely has been mine that data by itself, people don't necessarily like connect with it very well. And they also need these like kind of more colorful, like very specific sort of anecdotes. Is there sort of like an anecdote that you use to influence people internally of like, here's where this approach worked really well?
Yeah, I think just having some of our early adopters, because we definitely see the same, even with internal tools, we have some of those, the innovators and the early adopters who are already experimenting and helping us. I just saw, for instance, yesterday, someone just published a video where they were saying, this is how we can use our own platform and our own tools to come up with like new outputs and customer slides that really resonate with them. And then publishing that video helped everyone see like, wow, that's actually super powerful that we can use Notebook LM to then create or spin out customer slides that then we integrate into our presentation in Miro and then centralize all the information in Miro there. So I think just hearing directly from the customer and users and having them be advocates is what is super helpful for us, for sure.
Yeah, for those of us, our listeners, viewers, who want to emulate this, obviously, Miro is a really big company. I don't know exactly how big in terms of employees at this point, but let's say big. So they don't always have necessarily like this wealth of talent, but let's say they're on the way there. So how do you how would you recommend people setting up an insight function in their business? Maybe they're just kind of big enough to start doing it, or maybe they're rethinking it for the age of AI. Where do you recommend them to start?
Yeah. As long as you're encouraging that everyone should be using insights and not just mandate it, but then also, kind of infuse it into your processes. So for instance, to say, if you have a product idea, back it up with any type, you have to back it up with some user quotes, you have to back it up with some usage data for us to like get the go ahead to build that, or allowing again that spirit of experimentation and time to experiment. But both of those of like having the expectation that you should be using it because we don't want to make a decision that's not based on evidence. And we have to make a lot of decisions really rapidly. So it has to be part of your processes. I also do think that, sometimes people just don't have the time to experiment. They don't have the time to, or they have enough to do on their plates already. So I think definitely looping in someone from an operational perspective that has the deep understanding of what those within their org are doing and being able to understand that deeply and build processes and build the systems around it is really critical. I definitely see that, if you're a smaller organization, it could just be one person that's just really good at listening to internal teams and spinning out solutions and seeing, does this work? It worked for me. Does it work for you? I think that's a good starting point before you can really get to, like, now we kind of have that hub and spoke model where we have centralized teams working on data and analytics, centralized teams working on AI, and then we have kind of the subject matter experts who are really knowledgeable about how to use all those things. But I think a long time ago, there was also this idea that everyone should be an analyst, right?
Yeah.
And that really is, I think, the way that we should proceed now is everyone is an analyst, and the data and analytics people are serving up the right tools to make them self-serve and to help them become analysts. And same thing with AI, like serving up the right tools to get you to the right place so you don't have to figure it out yourself. So
now, because the danger if everyone is an analyst is if someone performs analysis wrongly, let's say, makes a mistake, right? Which even AI with all its powers is definitely very much prone to. I had an example yesterday where I used one of the analytics tools we have access to using their AI functionality, and it sort of like missed out one of the variables. Very, very subtle, completely wrong answer by a factor of 100%.
Yeah.
But something that's like, because I know the data really well, I could spot that there was a data missing. But and I only found it out because I validated it through the actual product without AI.
Right.
But I think a lot of the people, at Chatham, my colleagues were all amazing. But if they would run this analysis themselves, they potentially would not spot it and then potentially draw a completely wrong sort of insight from that. So I guess, your example was about like listening to one very specific customer very deeply, right? But how do you ensure that like in your product team, especially, right, that they make decisions, innovation team, make decisions for, all of the customers, prioritizing things correctly?
Yeah. And we definitely, because our product is, like our platform as a whole is quite complex.
Yep.
We still saw this, that we couldn't just say, this is how you should use customer insights and infuse it into your process. Because some of our product teams are building what we call widgets or different pieces on or different tools you can use on the canvas.
Yep.
Some are building full solutions. And that approach to leveraging insights into how you build your product is completely different, because widgets are going to be more about, you launch something, you look at all the customer insights, and then you say, okay, users are saying this, or they want to slightly be able to customize the color, they want to do this. So it's a little bit more reactive, whereas building a solution, you're doing research into having a deep understanding of a specific market and how they're operating, and it's more forward looking. So it definitely depends for every team. And I've worked with a lot of different insight systems. And I think, again, it typically is ensuring that the product manager has that mindset, and UX researchers are always going to kind of work with that mindset of being inquisitive. But then I think, to your point, also having the teams that are super knowledgeable about the data and how to get it and where to get it and how to process it in the right way to get the right outputs is really critical. That's where I sat before. I was kind of like the advisor of or building the systems.
Yeah, and that's how we met.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And then advising on how to do it, and then even saying, well, you can't measure NPS that way because you have to consider this, or exactly. I think there's a lot that goes into it. Or maybe you want to bring in all of the qualitative data because for your particular area, it's more enterprise focused, so we don't necessarily want to, or we can exclude this data, or so there's still a lot of that. We're trying to get more prescriptive with also our systems and outputs and making them as actionable as possible. So you aren't just like sitting with a lot of data that is in nice graphs, but you don't really know how to act on it. And that's where we're experimenting with a lot more. But I definitely see that space evolving a bit.
Yeah, the example I was talking about, it was even something as simple as like how many users logged into our app over a month. And even that, apparently, you can get completely wrong. But I find that in customer experience world, all the metrics are not completely established. As, to your point, even how to measure NPS. There's I've heard hundreds of versions over the years. And then if you want to measure something like sentiment, and there's again lots of different ways people define it.
And we don't want cherry picking too of like, oh, I want to build this product and do it this way, so I'm going to
And sometimes occasionally, some companies, they pay people based on NPS, so then people start suddenly having a lot of opinions about how it should be collected.
Right.
And that does actually make a huge difference. Unlike the numbers of people who log into the website, you can actually skew NPS quite dramatically. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Lisa, let's switch gears again and enter our very exciting hot take round. I'm going to ask a couple of questions. You can just go with your gut, but feel free to expand at length. It doesn't need to be a one-word answer, but it can be. It's up to you. What's a CX trend or buzzword that you wish would retire?
I'm guilty of using it a lot, but alignment, or saying like align with customers, because it should be more about like shared goals and shared understanding. And instead of saying where are we at now, that's kind of what alignment is about. It's saying like, where can we go in the future?
Awesome. And what is a brand that you think is killing it in customer experience? Someone that you look up to? Doesn't have to be in software.
I'll definitely I'll go out of software for this. I love Costco and Costco. So also it's definitely very North American. I think there's some in Europe. I wish there was one in the Netherlands, but Costco is all about customer loyalty. Absolutely love it. And they have just great like return policies. They're not flashy. They're just about like the best price for everyone because they just want, and getting you just like the best products. If you return something and it's like you've already eaten half of it and you're like, I don't like it, then they'll even like accept it back. But then they use that as data. They just say that is great input for us, so we know what we can do in the future. Or if sentiment is dropping on a product, they care more about your loyalty than about like the products themselves and relationships. So I think Costco is one that I've always thought about because they're really committed to that loyalty with customers, and you see it in everything they do.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I've never been a customer of Costco, but I've read and listened to a lot of podcasts about them. And it's a fascinating company, I think, because I think they do make most of their profit on those membership fees, essentially, right? Which is why they need to be obsessed about loyalty, if you think about it.
Yeah.
And as you say, they do really well. But I think it's the first time they were mentioned on our podcast, so that's fantastic. Okay, awesome. So what is one thing that you think our industry, software, where both of us work, still gets wrong about customer experience?
I'm going to go back to what I did say before about you can't just say that you're customer centric and hope everything will fall into place. It really needs to be woven throughout everything you do within the organization. And it needs to be a shared value whether you're customer facing or whether you're a developer or wherever you are, you need to have customer centricity baked into what you're doing. But again, the systems, the processes in place, like leadership also living by that too, and being good role models for what customer centricity should be. You hear that a lot of like, we're customer centric or we love our customers. But then if you're not actually living and breathing it in everything you do, it's hard to actually claim that. So,
awesome. And the final one, is there a recent customer experience interaction where you were a customer that stands out for you, either in a good way or in a bad way?
Yeah, actually, when usually flying, you don't in airlines are like more negative, but then I think it was through like my Sky Miles membership with Delta, and I decided not to upgrade that particular flight. And so I was just like in the back, like trudging my way to get on for my 8-hour flight. And then sitting on my seat was a little handwritten note from the flight crew. And they said, "Thank you for being a Sky Miles member, and we're happy to have you here today." And just that like little thing, like I didn't pay to upgrade, or I wasn't upgraded in my seat. I was just sitting in the kind of in the back of the plane, but still feeling like, oh, someone just took the time to do that. That was so nice, and set me off for what is usually a tiring flight in a good mood. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, actually, Delta surprisingly comes up quite a lot. I think they've really improved their customer experience in the last few years.
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah, we hear a lot of them mentioned. Even more kind of I'm guessing as an insight professional, when you think about how much effort it takes to do something like that at scale that they operate, assuming it wasn't just a single person deciding to do it, but it's an actual program, which maybe it was. Yeah. I think that's always really impressive. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being on the show, for joining us on How to Love a Customer. There's so much I think our listeners will take away from this. And if you haven't used Miro, then of course, please give it a try. For all of our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode of How to Love a Customer, then subscribe on player of your choice and come to us for the next episode. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.